Yes, we do see police checkpoints, a fair amount. But I wonder, do you think that perhaps a bit of the army should be embedded with the police in case of things like that? We remember the time when that shooter shot 2 police officers and stuff like that. Should we have something like that, the embedding of soldiers within the police?
Well, I don't think we will have
checkpoints. That's what I mean.
I don't think we would. There are usually what is called joint task force. So when you have joint task force, that one it comprises all the security services, including the military, the police, and the other security services. But there too, we have to make a clarification. There are several layers in our security architecture. When you look at the top, you have the commander-in-chief, that is the president. Below him, you have the Ministry of Defense, and then the other services under the Ministry of Interior. Under the Ministry of Defense, you have the Chief of Defense Staff, the Honorable Minister, and then the Chief of Defense Staff, who is the chief of the 3 arms of the armed forces. That's the Army, the Navy, and the Republican National Guards. Now I'm coming to look at their mandates. So for the Gambia National Army, they are responsible for the protection and preservation of sovereignty on land. You come to the Navy, it's at sea. Now, the Republican National Guard, under the Constitution, they are mandated and given powers equal to what the police have to support the police in internal security operations. A classical example, you look at this road clearance that is happening right now. When you look at the soldiers that are there, they are from the Republican National Guards and, let's say, the Gambia National Guards, because that's their mandate to support the police in internal security operations. You will not see the Gambia National Army there, because the Army's role is a measure of last resort. So checkpoints, public order management, dispersals of demonstrators, there is a sequence of events that has to follow. First, you have the internal security organs, that is the police, and their intervention unit, which is the police intervention. When they go up to a point and then their capacity is exhausted, you go to the next layer, wherein now you bring in the forces under the Ministry of Defense. And there also you have the National Guard, which has to be called in to come, because they have police mandate to also enforce, to disperse the crowd or preserve law and order. There, when they come in, they don't use live ammunition. What they have to use is rubber bullets, tear gas, like the police. That is the National Guard. Above them now, if the crowd is still untenable, not being able to be dispersed, now we go to the next layer, wherein now you have to call in the National Army. But even for the National Army, before it comes in, there are a series of procedures. The Minister of Defense will have to make a declaration or indicate that the National Guard is incapable, or let's say the Chief of Defense Staff is incapable of dealing with the situation, and then you call in the National Army. But for the National Army to come in, you need Parliament to sit over the issue and then decide on this civil disobedience case. And then a proclamation will be made by the National Assembly to proscribe, or let's say, determine them as an illegal organization or the procession being illegal. And then now the Commander-in-Chief will be empowered to give orders to the National Army to take the rightful course of action. So when it comes to internal security arrangement, in the armed forces, you have an outfit which is the Gambia National Guard or the Republican National Guard, under which you have the Fajara Barracks and the State Guards to support the police in the maintenance of law and order. So in this instance where you have this checkpoint, it is within their mandate and their purview to put up checkpoints, to mount surveillance, to conduct patrols, throughout the entire country, in support of the internal security services. In 2021, when we had the COVID, and then there was this rice distribution, it was the National Guards that came. The President made a proclamation of a state of emergency. It was the National Guards that were deployed to support the police in this endeavor. Sometimes, if the strength that is needed is more than that, then you probably have to bring in the army. But even the army, when you bring them, you don't arm them with lethal weapons, not with live ammunition, but you give them rubber bullets, blank ammunition, and so on and so forth. When you look at the case in point, the crisis that happened in the Fonyi belt, you know, when we had the Senegalese forces and the MFDC, we also launched an operation called Operation Wula Kokon. The forces that were deployed there were with blue beret. And for identification purposes, green beret is for the National Army. The blue beret is for the Guards Battalion or the State Guards. So when you look at the operation in Fonyi that we conducted, it was the National Guard that was deployed there to conduct patrols. And patrols, the aim was to reassure the population and also to build confidence so that they know that they don't have anything to fear and that we are there on their side to provide them safety and protection.
Yes. Well, interesting.
So
he categorized this thing into different. For me, for people like me, army is just the army.
Yeah.
You know, we just see a man in uniform. We don't even know what he does, who is who.
Yeah, there was even a time, even this khaki, this uniform that I'm putting on, we had to even categorize the one for the National Guard. It was light green or light green that they had.
Yeah.
With the blue beret. So that's the National Guard. And all over the world, they have that mandate under the Constitution. You know, the lawyers are out there. They can look at the Constitution under the Gambia Armed Forces Act. There is subsidiary legislation that mandates the National Guard to, in addition, in fact, it says in addition to their paramilitary function. So when you say paramilitary, like let's say paralegal, it's somebody who has a bit of the part you are saying legal. So when you say paramilitary, in legal parlance, it means he has a bit of military training. So the National Guard is saying, like, in addition to their paramilitary function under the Constitution, they can perform roles that the police are performing. You know, mounting surveillance, you know, patrols throughout the entire territory. Even the French system, when you look at Senegal, for example, the equivalent of the National Guard in the Gambia is the Gendarmerie. They in Senegal, they are in charge of territorial protection, the presidential guards. So even when you look at even the economic here, the guards are the state guards, they are the gendarmerie from Senegal, not the National Army. Because for the National Army, it is a bigger, you know, mandate that they have. So all these, you know, systems are put in place to give room for negotiation. Because let's say there's a public order disturbance, and then you deploy the police. They are overpowered. You deploy the PIU, the paramilitary the forces. You know, they also cannot contain the situation. Now the Minister of Interior has to report to the President and say this situation is untenable. We need a bigger force or another force. Therein now the President will instruct the Chief of Defense Staff to deploy the National Guard. And when the National Guard comes, they don't come with live ammunition, like I said earlier. The same like the police came with tear gas, rubber bullets to contain the situation, while the two parties, you know, are negotiating. To all that is meant towards maintaining peace and order.
Absolutely.
It's not to escalate. So you bring in the National Guard so that we still keep the tempo. So now even after the negotiations, if there cannot be a solution, then now you escalate to the next level, wherein now you call in the National Army. When the National Army comes in now, is all hell breaking loose.
Yes.
You know, no room for negotiation because it's like we have exhausted all, you know, avenues to negotiate. So
once the National Army is there, there is no more negotiation.
Like the Syrians will say, "Chakan fahe."